Hi, my name is Josh Gottry. Welcome to today's weekly lesson. Today we're going to look a little bit at brushes and just some basic approaches to playing ballads using brushes and kind of that stirring motion that's involved to create that texture and some variations that you can use when playing ballads with brushes on drum set. I'm going to use traditional grip. When I play, I feel most comfortable with that when I'm playing brushes, but this is by no means limited to that approach. Certainly you can play this with matched grip, but just a quick note that that's what I'm using just because of how I feel most comfortable manipulating the brushes when doing this sort of playing. So the first thing we're going to do is just trying to create a texture. The brushes, unlike sticks, can create length by dragging it across the drum head, and we want to do that as smoothly as possible except when we want to create a pulse. So the first thing to do would just be to create just some circles, one hand at a time, using as much of the head as possible. So I'm going to start with my right hand and just do some nice easy circles. You notice that I create a slight pulse as I come around the top, just to be aware that anytime we're playing texture, we're still going to create some sort of pulsing or beat that gives our ensemble that we're playing with some clarity as far as where the time is in the music. Do the same thing with my left hand. And I'm just trying to create as smooth a texture as possible other than that one pulse. Use as much of the drum head as possible. Then we can go ahead and use both hands at the same time. As we do that, one hand will cross over the other, so we can use as much of the head as possible without actually touching the brushes together. So they're going to kind of overlap, the right hand taking the top right side of the drum, the left hand taking the bottom left side of the drum, but as they come across, they can use a range of the head that was used by the other brush without crossing over or actually impacting each other and making contact. So here's that same thing. And there we've got some nice circles, both hands, creating some very clear time as far as where the beat is. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and just pick that up a little bit as far as a quicker tempo. Not much, but just a little bit. You'll notice that the pulse that I'm creating with each hand is simultaneous, so we don't have a lack of clarity as far as where the beat is. Both hands creating that slight extra pressure and slight extra speed to create that pulse right at the same time, so that we have a very clear designation of where the beat is. Okay. The next thing I would encourage you to do is do that same pulse, but then move to a double time pulse and then come back to that. So one measure of quarter notes, one measure of eighth notes. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and And what we're doing there is just giving us the option of creating more energy in our playing or more forward motion just by doubling up where those pulses come. Often when we play a ballad, we want to go ahead and infer a little bit of the swing feel. Bing, ding, ga, ding, ding, ding that we might be playing on the ride cymbal, that we're not necessarily playing when we're using the snare drum. Certainly you can use hi-hat and bass drum and occasional notes on the ride cymbal while you're doing brushes, but we want to be able to define that time and texture and feel with just the snare drum, and then use those as icing or decoration above and beyond. So one of the ways we can do that is offsetting that accent ever so slightly so that the left hand accent comes before the right hand accent, and we hear a little bit of that inferred swung eighth note, that ding ding a ling, coming from that left hand offset accent on the end of 2 and the end of 4, or one or the other. So if I take my regular quarter notes, you can hear me add that extra accent with the left hand. Just a little bit, ever so slightly, to create that texture. Now I could do that on every beat. I could do it just once a measure. For example, here's just the end of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Or here's every beat. 1, 2, 2. Back to quarter note. 2, 2. Back to quarter note. There, you get the idea. So that can be sprinkled in as much or as little as you want, just to create a little bit of the texture of where that swing feel is, or those little lilting offbeat eighth notes can come into play. Now there's certainly a lot more things you can do with a snare drum with brushes beyond just some of this time stirring, but there's the basics. You can get really good at those 3 things: quarter notes, first one hand at a time, then both hands together, then be able to do that at different tempos, and then regular time, quarter note time, and double time, and then start mixing in when that left hand accent comes into play on the swung end of the beat, before the beat, to create a little bit of that swing feeling. There's a good start for you. Add the hi-hat on 2 and 4, maybe a little bit of sparse bass drum to punctuate some downbeats or accents within the melody, and you've got a good start on your ballad with brushes. Hope that helps. Enjoy. Have a great week.